So, I don't know where I'm going with this video, but I'm going to try to make it anyways. Pretty much I've spent the better part, I'd say, of about 10 to 11 hours messing with pfSense, right? Probably 8 of those hours were all last night, and I want to bang my head against the wall repeatedly until it bleeds. First of all, my experience with pfSense, rather limited. I've installed it, I've tested it, I've got it working before, but it was only like in a test environment. Sometimes, one time I did it in a virtual machine, but I've never actually sat down and tried to configure it for deployment. And by that, I mean just swapping out my main router that I use now, which is currently a TP-Link C5400. So pretty much in order for me to deploy something on my network, I have to go through and I have to configure it and make sure that all of my stuff will work once I do the switch. I want everything else inside my network configured to run, configured to be assigned the proper addresses, everything that I have set up right now. The IPs that I have assigned to devices in my house that are used to communicate with other stuff in my house, servers and that sort of thing, those all have dedicated IP addresses. They have their own subnet. They have to work a certain way, and if I don't have that option to make them work a certain way, then I have to go back and reconfigure all of my other devices. Now I'm adding more cameras that I have dedicated IPs for, that are tied into the DVR software that I'm running, Blue Iris, on top of servers and file hosts and backup destinations and all kinds of stuff that I have configured on my network. That is actually the reason. I don't know if you can see it up here, but you have that Norton router right there. That's a router that I've been messing with. That is actually the reason why I don't want to use that router as a daily driver, and that's the reason why I'm looking at pfSense. Because although I do like it, and you guys can hate me all you want to, but although I do like the added security that I get from that router, it still limits my ability to control my network. They've made it so simple that it's too simple. That's great for someone like me who wants easy security, but it lacks the ability to do simple things like change your subnet IP range. Like you're forced onto their IP range. You can't change that. And there's a few other examples, but it's limited my network configuration, where I could still use it potentially if I were to go through and reconfigure everything else on my network. But I don't want to do that, you know what I mean? So anyways, back to the point at hand. I have been working the better part, I don't know what I say, like 10 or 11 hours on this. Now, this is the Byte 3 miniature PC from Azul. They sent me this for review because I, do a lot of like Plex related content, and this is, supposed to be a media player. And it was a good media player. But the thing is that the Apollo Lake CPU in here, this handles encryption that pfSense utilizes. It's I forgot what it's called, AES or something like that, but it handles the encryption that pfSense uses, so that's good. It's got 4 cores with 4 gigabytes of RAM, which is recommended for pfSense. It's got a built-in 30-some gigabyte flash memory drive, which is great just for the installation. You can install other stuff like M.2 SSDs, or you can install just a regular SATA SSD. So you can have additional caching drives installed in this if you wanted to. So on the surface, this thing is damn near perfect for a pfSense build, with one exception. And that exception is it only comes with one NIC, one network interface card, one LAN port. I know that you can go through and you can set up VLANs and you can utilize the same port in some kind of witchcraftery, and turn it in, but I don't want that, right? I want dedicated ports. I don't want any hindered speed, any transfer issues between compute. Like I want dedicated ports. I know it sounds dumb, but that's what I want. So this is what I did. After I reviewed this and I checked it out and I said, you know what, this has all the pieces that I need except for a port, or additional LAN ports. So I went online and I bought a StarTech That's a USB Type-C connection right here. Let me actually. So I bought this StarTech. It's a USB Type-C connection. It goes from Type-C to RJ45. Now this is USB 3.1 Gen 1, 5 gigabits per second. Now this is pretty fast, of course, and USB Type 3 or USB 3.0 is fast as well. But I bought this thinking, maybe this might have lower latency. It's going to be super fast. It's going to be, just a great NIC overall. And the Byte 3 supports Type-C connection. So why not? Funny part is, this device with a Type-C connection was literally the first USB Type-C device I have ever used. I've ever plugged into anything. I've handled a Type-C cable, but I've never actually plugged it in and used it. So, funny, just a little side note there. And then, because most of the time when I do stuff, I run into issues, I actually ordered this. It's a USB 3.0 to RJ45. Now, this is still fast. It's still going to give me the speed. It's USB 3.0, but I wanted to try to get the Type-C working, just so I could try to avoid any kind of, latency issues or any kind of, decrease in speed, when it's put under pressure, that sort of thing. Not that I had any merit, to that assumption, no merit whatsoever, but I wanted to try Type-C and then fall back on 3.0 if needed, or for that matter, just have both of them installed and have two ports on the actual device itself. So I got these, I ordered these, I posted it on Twitter, and then somebody donated the money that I spent on these to me, and kind of lit a fire on my ass, because now I have somebody that actually paid me money to work on this pfSense build. I feel like I'm obligated, so which is good actually, because this is the complexity of this project so far is one of those things where I have a lot of stuff to work on. Specifically, I got an idea for this Norton Core router that I want to work on in some other videos, so things get pushed back a lot. This has actually kept me motivated, so that's good. And I want to thank, I don't remember your name, but I want to thank whoever donated that money, to pay for the pfSense parts or the NICs for this. I definitely appreciate that. You didn't have to, but since you did, love you. So back to where we are. So I spent a bunch of time on this thing. I installed pfSense, I went through the installation, and I tried to fumble around myself, right? I tried to get it working myself. And I had some of the most ridiculous issues, the first and foremost, like when I started to get everything set up, the way I'm doing this, by the way, because I'm pre-setting it up before I deploy it, is that the WAN port is connecting to my switch that's behind my main router, right? So this is a router behind a router, and I'm doing it like this because I want to run basically this, pfSense build to where it's only connected to two computers. One's my test box, and it's that i7 computer that I've used for Plex testing, and I used to use it for DVR surveillance testing, and it's just kind of a generic box that I go to. It's a fallback computer. So I have two things connected to it. So I have that test box, and then I have my main computer. That of course allows me to configure and do stuff on my main computer. So, but it is behind my main router. So I'm going to be pulling a DHCP IP address from my main router. Not that big of a deal. And then, but when I got everything set up, and I had, the WAN connected to my switch, and I was able to connect to it via the IP address that my router assigned to it, my main router assigned to this box. As soon as I added the LAN port, right, that LAN NIC, and it came up and it started running, I lost all connection through the WAN port. Could not connect it or connect to it by going through my other router. It just would not be accessible. It's Sunday morning or Saturday morning, and this is coffee. But anyways, it was not accessible, and I was dealing with that for a while, longer than I needed to. And I was dealing with that because I plugged in the LAN port into my computer, into the second RJ45 port that I have, or the Ethernet port that I have on my computer, and I couldn't get it to connect or be assigned an IP address. So I couldn't connect to the WAN to configure the web GUI anymore, and I couldn't connect through the LAN either, and I couldn't get an IP address, or I couldn't get any kind of network connectivity. And here's the fun part when you're doing stuff like this. When you get into something and you've been dealing with something, you dedicate like 2 or 3 hours to it, then you realize it was something stupid that you did, right? Something idiotic, just downright, I don't want to say the R word because someone's probably going to get triggered, but just pretty much downright just that. right? And that was that I previously, for whatever reason, configured that NIC to have a dedicated IP address internally, right? A dedicated IP address, so it was not pulling a DHCP address, it was trying to dedicate itself to the IP address that I specified. And the reason why this doesn't work is because I was changing the sub IP net, the 192.168.1. whatever, I changed it .2. whatever, right? So that way I could go through and configure it, make sure it was working, etc. And then all I had to do is go in there and switch the IP range for the DHCP, and I'd be set up and ready to go. So I was hassling with this for a couple hours, and I spent, I don't know, 2-3 hours trying to figure this out. I couldn't get it to connect. I mean, it was a pain in the butt. And then I finally realized I had to switch back to DHCP, and then all of a sudden I was able to access the web GUI from the LAN port. Still can't do it from the WAN port, but I could connect to it from the LAN port. So that was a stupid hurdle. And I say this, I tell you this because, I try to make polished videos on projects that I work on, stuff that I do, and most of the time I don't go through the headaches. I don't walk you through the headaches that I go through, because you want to make a polished video, you want to at least somewhat look like you know what you're doing, but in reality, the funny thing about knowing what you're doing is that it's kind of boring. For me, anyways. Sure, you can know how to do something and repeat it over and over again, and that's great. You become very proficient with it. You basically become a professional. But where's the fun in that? So I get into things I don't know, which is why pfSense has always intrigued me, because I don't know it. I'm very limited in Linux commands, SSH, that sort of thing. It's all a learning experience for me. Sometimes even when I learn it, I forget it, so I can learn it over and over again. The point is that stupid things like that can cost you hours of messing around with it to try to figure out how to get it up and running, rebooting and re-imaging it and trying everything you can. You're like, what the hell is going on? And then you realize, oh, I'm an idiot. Fast forward a little bit, I was able to connect to the LAN, was able to configure it, get it up and running, and then I had no internet access whatsoever, right? I connected to the WAN, to the switch, of course, I had that still connected, and then I had the LAN connected to the pfSense box. No internet connection. Could not figure it out. I knew that the pfSense box had access to the internet. I verified that it had access. Could not figure that out. Did some Google research. Thankfully, this was not much longer than a 15-minute diagnostic thing, but I found out that the firewall is aggressive as shit, and it has a default rule to where it just blocks everything, right? So once you realize that, you go in there, you open up everything, and then you have access to the internet. Problem solved. Then I go through, I'm like, okay, cool, I get everything configured, I'm able to connect to the internet, everything looks peachy. And then I decide to add the second NIC. Okay, this time I did some research. How do you add another NIC and still have it use your subnet, and I was able to get everything configured and bridged, and that was all peachy. It was great. Got that done, got that set up, and then I move on to the next thing, which was utilizing Squid. Now, I've known of Squid for a while. I've known of its existence. I've messed around, tried to get it working before. And if you don't know what Squid is, there's a proxy server, the integration with I think it's Clam virus scanner. That Squid is basically what's going to, one, filter content that you choose. Not that I need that. I just want to get it running. I don't actually want to filter anything, but I just want to prove that I can get it running. And then you can also scan and block harmful websites or downloads, right? So that is basically the protection. And what's really bringing that up again is this Norton core, right? The Norton core has that built in, and it's super simple to set up, and it can block certain things, filter certain things, whatever. So that's what I was trying to set up was the pfSense management system that allows you to filter and block certain things. And really, to me, is the pfSense, the firewall that's built in. That was the main attraction. Sure, you get more control. You can see more activity on your network. You can log stuff. You can do caching. There's a lot of benefits to pfSense, things that have allured me to the pfSense build for a while. I just haven't dove into it this deep. But the main thing is being able to control your network, secure your network, and just manage everything more hands-on as long as you can get it set up. So I get that installed, and I can't get it to run. I can't get the service to start. It says it's starting. I can't get the antivirus to run. I dick around with it for so long, trying to get it running myself. Finally, I uninstall Squid, uninstall everything related. I look up YouTube videos. I'm watching tutorials step by step. I mean, I'm walking through the screen step by step, and then it doesn't work still, right? And this is last night. This is like 1 o'clock in the morning last night, or this morning, I guess, and it didn't work, And I followed this, the tutorial was step by step, right? I mean, what did I mess up? I figured, and I don't know for sure, this is basically where I am right now. This is my video that I'm making. This is the point that I'm at right now. I've concluded to myself, be it true or not, that the fumbling around that I did in pfSense before I decided to look up YouTube videos and tutorials or online write-ups, the fumbling around that I did most likely has conflicted with what I would try to do later, right? With YouTube videos, with tutorials. I've added and removed a bunch of stuff. I've changed things. I've made, setting configurations that I knew kind of what they were, but not really what they should be. I've made so many alterations to pfSense and pfSense add-ons that even if I uninstall it, there's a lot of configuration stuff that I remember changing that are still there, that I think I've muddied the water. And in my experience, with my limited experience, I don't think I have the ability to undo the damage that I did before. So, here's where I am now. Basically, I'm going to start over. This is pfSense, right? This is what I used to install it before. I'm going to start over. I'm going to re-image it. I'm going to set it up just enough to get connected to the internet, or just get up and running, and I am going to start over. And I want to say this before I jump to the next part of this video. That firewall on pfSense is almost too aggravating. I mean, I get a lot of firewall logs saying that a bunch of stuff was blocked, and I know that a lot of that has to do with things on my network being behind pfSense, right? Or no, I'm sorry, in front of pfSense, because it's picking up things like network communication between my wife's laptop or my cameras, that sort of thing, and it's blocking a lot of stuff like that. But it's kind of annoying when you have two NICs installed, right? You have two of these. One goes to your test computer, the other goes to your main computer, and you want it to do something simple, right? Simple, like an iPerf test, which is just a throughput, tester between two computers on your internal network, and the firewall blocks it, right? You have rules in there that say, open up everything, allow everything, don't block anything, right? And it doesn't matter. It's still blocking it because it's a giant piece of shit. At least that's what goes through my head. So, and the aggravating part here is that if I connect my test box through this or whatever, one of these, and then I connect my main computer just directly to my switch, bypassing pfSense, I can run iPerf, right? And then if I connect both of them, one to each one, I can't. If I connect my computer through pfSense and my test box bypass pfSense, I can run iPerf. But again, you connect them both, you can't do it. And then, this gets so... I haven't figured this part out, and this is so frustrating to me. Then, you go in, and you're tired of dicking with the firewall. You hate it at this point. You just want to test your stuff. Then, you go in to the general settings, right? And you completely disable any filtering, right? You turn the firewall off. You check the little box, you hit save, right? And then all of a sudden, both computers that are connected through the NICs, separate NICs, dedicated NICs, both computers are able to communicate with each other via iPerf and run the iPerf test, right? You think, Eureka, the firewall is it. I just got to learn the firewall. But then your internet goes down. Neither one of your computers have access to the internet. You can communicate with each other, but you can't communicate to the internet. Why the is it like that? I don't know. I cannot understand. I've rebooted it. I've made the change, rebooted it, and I've done... I don't know why that does not work, and it frustrates the living hell out of me. Yeah. And you might think, well, that's not that big of a deal, right? Why is it that you want to disable the firewall? That's the whole point of pfSense, and I 110% agree with you. However, before I deploy this, I wanted to run some tests, right? I wanted to see what kind of limited communication or what kind of degradation of speed am I going to have utilizing these, USB connected NICs. Am I going to have any kind of speed hindrance because I'm running through USB connected NICs? That was my biggest concern. If you want to run an iPerf test, right, through a firewall, you're going to obviously have some some degradation of speed there, because or you're going to obviously have some loss of speed there. At least in my head, I'm not going to expect a firewall router to perform as fast as a dummy switch, as far as communicating between computers. So I wanted to see what kind of speed difference I would have. So if only just for testing, I wanted to see how fast it would be. But I can't get access to the internet with it turned off. So yeah, but I can say this: I did run a lot of tests with speed test, with and without the pfSense connected, or going through or going around the pfSense box. And as far as my network connectivity outside my network, I do not notice any difference in speed. So that's good, right? But not everything's outside. There's a lot of internal communication on my network. So that's only one small step in the grand scheme of things. So anyways, now I'm going to re-image this thing, and I'm going to start over. I'm going to try to record what I'm going to do software-wise, but yeah, I don't know how long it's going to take. I know since I spent like 8 hours last night on this, I doubt I'm gonna record 8 hours of me messing around with it. Hopefully, I've learned enough that I'm not going to have 8 hours worth of stuff, but either way, that's what I'm going to do now. And I just recorded for 24 minutes, me rambling. Also, oh, my light's not on. I'm changing the game a little bit here too. Before I had each NIC dedicating itself, right, to a computer. So now, what I'm going to do to change it up is that I'm just going to have one NIC, because I ran into some issues trying to figure out bridging and all that. I don't know. I think I got it set up right, but just in taking out more variables, I'm going to hook one NIC up to this and use this as a switch. So that's going to be the different way of doing it, and hopefully more simple way of doing it. Okay, so it's now like 7-ish, and I've been working on this most of the day. I've taken a few breaks, got sidetracked, a little bit of, ADD. But right now, I'm actually up and running, and I have everything configured, and what I wanted to work is working. So it's been a productive day, and it's definitely been a learning experience. Now, where I left off is that I was reprogramming this machine with a new copy of pfSense, and basically starting over, because I was following tutorials online and it didn't work for me. So I figured I screwed something up. Turns out that I didn't screw anything up. The tutorial that I was watching was for 2.3 or something, version 2.3, and the pfSense I'm running is 2.4. So I don't know if that's the reason why it didn't work or why the settings were different, but basically in the video that I was watching, it was said to not enable transparent transparent proxy, and nothing would work for me still after I got everything set up. But I enabled transparent proxy, and then all of a sudden everything worked. So basically the shit of it is that if I would have enabled that on the previous version that I had up and running and installed and ready to go, that I could have saved myself 3 or whatever hours that I spent dicking around with it the next time around. So yeah, that's fun. 2.4 transparent proxy is the way to go. Once I did that, everything worked. I was able to get, okay, let's back up. So I went through and I installed everything from scratch. I installed Squid, the Squid Lite. Squid Lite's the reporting thing, I think. The proxy server, the filtering service. I set what I wanted to filter, which wasn't really much. I'm just more of testing things at this point. I did a test where I blocked bytemybits.com just to make sure that was working. Then I enabled the Clam antivirus. Got that working, verified that was working. So this was a long process, and I do have a lot of video of me recording what I was doing, because if I failed, I was going to post it online and ask for help. But everything's working, so I'm not going to bore you with all the little details like that. But so I went through and installed everything, and then a user on Twitter was just like, "Oh, I don't use Squid anymore. I use PF Blocker. Squid's out of date. It's a piece of crap." He didn't really say that, but he did mention that PF Blocker NG was kind of the new thing. I did some research on that real quick, and a lot of people use Squid and PF Blocker for different reasons, but simultaneously. So I also installed that, got that working. I added some definitions or some lists to that for blocking basically entire countries from incoming connections to my network. So for whatever reason, if China wanted to try to hack me, I don't know if they would, obviously they won't, but if China or Russia wanted to hack my network, they would have to either A, mask their IP or use a proxy going through a US IP, or B, they would get blocked because they had a China-based IP address. So I added that. So I added the PF Blocker, the Squid, the firewall, the antivirus, got everything up and running. It is awesome. Now I'm on to my next challenge, and I'm sure I could figure it out, but I'm on to my next challenge where, you remember this thing? Okay. I just want to say, first of all, I was misguided when I was planning on using this in my attic. And the reason why I say that is because I thought to myself, you know what, I could probably get away putting this in the attic, but I should probably put it in my garage, right, so it doesn't overheat. But in reality, my garage was overheated anyway, so even if this would have worked, hooking up my Unified G3 camera, there's a huge possibility it would have been overheating and having issues. So I'm glad that it didn't work. That way, when summer comes around, I don't have problems. That's a side note, so getting distraction. So now, I want to reconfigure this. It's a ACS or ACM 3200. I mean, this is a nice router. I'm not actually going to use this. I like my C5400, but I'm going to reconfigure this as just a wireless access point. And on my... Now, I have my pfSense router. Now, I set things up pretty much to where I only have one connected RJ45 adapter. I wanted two, but I only have one. And maybe later on I'll try to figure out the bridging and see if I have any issues with that. But for now, this is working, so it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I have that hooked up to my switch. One is going, okay, so this comes from the router. This one is going to, yeah, okay. So this one's going to my test box. That's basically my test server and everything. This one is going to my Xbox, and this one's going to my main computer. So as it sits right now, this is all going to different things that I was testing out and making sure connected, which, by the way, everything connected. It was awesome. So now I'm going to hook this up as another port or another point on that and use it as just a wireless access point, using the Wi-Fi radios built in just as an access point. Not because I want to deploy that specific router as an access point that I want to use, but because I want to test it and get it added and then make sure everything works. I don't really think pfSense is going to have a lot of configurations past just using it or accepting it as a wireless router. I don't know yet. I haven't dove into it yet, but that is my plan. And I can say this has been, I don't want to say aggravating, but frustrating. This has been frustrating because I'm kind of playing around, more or less, trying to figure stuff out, right? And I'm looking up tutorials, and some of the tutorials are wrong, or they're all saying different things, and what it really boils down to is that there's one small change in the version of pfSense can change the way it operates. So one tutorial is good for one version, and then they update it, and then a bug gets fixed or a feature gets added, and it changes the whole dynamics of it. So it's like, you can look up stuff on it, but there's no guarantee that that's going to work for you. Either way, it's fun once I kind of got everything up and running, and it works great, and I don't have any issues so far. Right now I'm running my main computer solely through pfSense, and it's been, a good experience so far. So where I am now, it's great. Hopefully it won't break on me, but it's great. Still a little aggravating, a little frustrating, but great. Whoa, focus. All right. So I got a lot of work done today. And the thing is that, like, I've been working on this for, I'm just going to go all the way down on that one. I've been working on this thing for, I don't know, I lost track of the hours. But here's where I am. As it sits right now, like I said before, I had all that stuff configured, and my next step was to set up a wireless access point. And setting up the wireless access point was actually really easy. At least it was with Linksys. Linksys, they have a bunch of different modes that you can select your router as, bridges and so forth. So setting it as a wireless bridge was super simple, and then you just plug it into the switch, and then boom. Of course, you're gonna have to set your wireless access point, like your wireless names, which I just set it as like pfSense 5 and pfSense 2.4. But it's basic configuration. After that, once you set it as a bridge, a wireless bridge, and you hook it up to your switch that connects to your pfSense router, it just recognizes it and assigns whatever's connected to it with a DHCP address, and then you're good to go. And of course, it's going to set the router itself to its own IP address, so if you did ever have to go through and manage your wireless settings, then you would just connect to that separately. So it's super simple to do. So here's where I am right now. Pretty much, I am at a point where, since everything is set up, I have the wireless access point hooked up, I have everything configured and ready to go. My next step is to essentially run it as a testing environment for, I don't know, maybe a week or two before I actually deploy it as a permanent solution. And the reason why I want to do that is because I want to make sure that, I'm not going to run into any issues on my own computer where I'm running into sites that maybe get blocked, or I got to tweak some firewall rules, just any little knick-knack stuff that, just comes up that you don't really notice or know what you need to do with until it actually pops up. That's what I want to test out, and that's what I want to make sure I perfect until I roll this out as a permanent solution. And I know that might sound a little weird to a lot of people. It's like, dude, just install it and deploy it. Who cares? But I want to make sure that, for right now, I have my DVR set up with the security cameras that I'm running. I want to make sure those stay online. My Plex server is online. I want to make sure that, I still have some virtual machines going that do require an internet connection constantly. So I have to make sure that I'm online at least as much as, humanly possible or technically possible. So taking down the network and, switching it out with a different router is kind of a big task on my end as far as wanting to keep everything online. So before I do anything like that, I am going to test this thing out for a while, make sure everything is good, and then, and only then, will I deploy it as a daily use thing. And really at this point, since I have the access point and everything set up, I have everything configured, the only thing I'd have to do from here is to go in and change the sub IP address, the subnet, instead of 192.168.2 dot whatever, I'll change it to 192.168.1, which is back to my original, subnet. So once I do that, I can set up my address reservation, and everything will be still configured as it is, and then I can deploy it and switch everything over with little to no effort as far as, configuring other devices, because it'll just plug in and everything will connect and it'll be good to go, including the wireless, because once I configure the wireless, utilizing the C5400, it should maintain the same wireless, SSIDs and password, or it will contain the same SSIDs and passwords, so everything will connect. And that's really what I'm aiming for, is just, a seamless transition from pfSense, or from my main router to pfSense, and having no downtime, or very little downtime, and not having to go through and change anything on my network. Now the big difference here is that I am going to have a added layer of security, and I'm going to go as far as to say, and this is speculating, probably more so than what I have with the Norton Core, because with the Norton Core, while it does protect, like it does have a firewall and it does give you some, virus scanning built into it, that's pretty much all you have. You can't specify entire countries, blocking entire countries from connecting to your network. Or you can't specify like a certain blacklist of IPs that are connected to advertisers or malware sites or certain things like that. Now, of course, some of that is controlled through the Norton Core, servers where they have their blacklisted servers, and I'm sure there's a lot of, similar IP addresses that are shared on those lists. But with the pfSense, of course, it's going to be more controlled, and you can, adjust and add and do whatever you want rather than putting everything in the hands of the Norton Core. And I'm not ragging on the Norton Core. I mean, the Norton Core is actually really easy to just set up, forget, it's there, it's working, it's doing its thing, and you're not spending like 15 hours getting the damn thing working. So, there's definitely something can be said for something as simple as a consumer product like that. But if you're willing to put in the time and you're just that nerdy and you want to actually explore what else is out there, pfSense is kind of fun to learn. A little aggravating, a little irritating, but definitely fun to learn. So guys, this video started off with a question mark in my head, and I didn't know how I was going to do it. I thought maybe I would try to get everything set up and it would fail, and then I would post a video asking for help. But I am just resilient enough and just stubborn enough to just keep pounding through and Googling every single error message that pops up, that I was able to get it up and running. I was able to get it figured out. So I guess what this video is just like, hey, this is the project that I started. These are some of the things that I ran into. And although I haven't deployed it, this will give you a taste of what it's like to set up something that you really know very little about. I mean, for me, I've barely scratched the surface as far as what pfSense was able to do before this video. And even still now, I mean, I've scratched a little bit deeper, but in reality, I'm still a noob when it comes to pfSense. So I guess if anything, this video can just be a window into the nerd's life when he's trying to figure something out that he doesn't quite understand. So as always, guys, thank you for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. I do want to do a follow-up video, something where I'm going to deploy this and set everything up, and it's going to be a little bit more official. This is more of kind of like a, I don't want to say vloggy style, but it's just a little bit more relaxed version of my little setup project. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. But again, I appreciate you guys for watching it either way. If you guys have any questions or anything, post them down below. If you have any comments on maybe things that I did wrong, I'm eager to listen to how stupid I am, because I'm pretty sure I probably messed something up somewhere. So again, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe below, and have a good night.